So I see lots of familiar faces here. That's awesome. Some of you have been in a previous session with me, maybe another, but I do see that lots of you are familiar faces. That's great. What I also have is your awesome leaders here who have been trying to train you, teach you about two things that I believe this group is focused on: Rails, and another group is focused on iOS application development. And by the way, that is such a fabulous combination as a group, if you will. If you think about what's happening in the industry today, is that these people carry these devices like the phones, iOS and Android and Windows Phone, and all of these devices are essentially, you reuse them. Like you can actually back up the whole thing and take another device and resume the whole operation on another device. It's very effortlessly happening today. What people call in the iPhone, they call it the iCloud. You save a backup on the iCloud, you throw that phone away, or maybe sell it off, and get a new phone and restore the whole thing. Your applications, your settings, your configuration data, every single thing that you think of comes back to life just as if that was your new phone that you had in the original instant, the phone you gave away. The same concept is now also available if you have heard of this thing called Chromebook. That's like a laptop from Google. So you log into your Gmail and you work on it, everything gets stored away from you. So nothing actually gets stored here. So you can effectively, in fact, that's how Google advertises, is you take a Google Chromebook, use it, throw it away. Get a new one, log in, and you have exactly that same starting point which you stopped at. So if you're like halfway editing a document in Google Docs, and you have a cursor blinking at a specific location, in that new Chromebook that you will open up, that exact point in time snapshot with the state preserved is available to you. Now what's going on? Can somebody tell me? What's going on? How is the magic happening? Yes, please.
Well, it's becoming a dummy terminal in a sense, and you're doing all your computing in the cloud. And so it's making the device just an access point, and you're really actually doing the work somewhere else.
Yes, that's the user's perspective. But tell me about the back end. What's going on the back side? Who's doing what? Think about it. Some server somewhere is doing what?
It's storing the information, it's doing some processing for you, or requests.
Yes. So it's storing two distinct things: the data itself and your user state. Like what were you doing at that time where you logged in, opened up a particular file, or whatever that setting is. Let's say if you have an iPhone or an iPad, you have a specific layout of your applications. All that settings and application layout is preserved inside iCloud, the cloud that they provide, that Apple provides. Same concept with Google Cloud, and similar concept coming from Windows in Microsoft. So all these devices essentially are becoming more or less replaceable, from a consumer's perspective. If you have a device, you use it, and you get that same experience, and you continue along in that particular ecosystem of devices and services. So if you think of Apple iPhone and the iCloud services and the apps, the ecosystem around it, that's a big ecosystem. And if you are in that ecosystem playing that game in there, you have the backup, the ability to make use of these services available to you already. Same concept is what you are trying to develop. Like I think this group, half of them are trying to develop applications for the iPhone. Right, so you can create an application that will say just hello world on the iPhone and do nothing else. That's like, a kindergartner can do it these days, pretty much. You start up the Xcode software, develop an app, type something and say play. And it'll compile, build the app and run it in the emulator. If you have an iPhone, it'll load the app on the iPhone, but that's not the idea. The idea is not about running your applications and doing whatever on the device, but it's a connected world. A connected world in the sense that you have these other things, not just objects or computers or PCs or Macs, but other things. When I say things, I actually mean a variety of objects. Like 2 days ago, there was this announcement from Google that they acquired a company called Nest. So that Nest is actually an object. It's a smart object. What it does is lets you control the temperature of your home, and it's a smart thermostat, effectively, a Wi-Fi connected thermostat. So you can control temperature of your home from here. I can control my temp in my home. I can do that. A few days ago, I also bought another thing called Nest. It's called some kind of a smoke detector. Yeah, so, and what it does is it integrates in your home with the thermostat. And so if you're moving around in the home, it will mark you as not away. So it will keep the furnace active. Otherwise, if you're like, let's say my wife is upstairs all the time, she's never downstairs, where the thermostat is. Now that we have the sensor, the smoke sensor upstairs also, that sensor system together is able to detect that she's there. So it doesn't mark the home as away and gets cold. So that ability to interoperate between devices is happening already. And on what you will see going forward is this concept of cloud, which is a very amorphous word. And when you think about the cloud and connected devices, what's going on essentially is what I would like to understand. What do you think of when you think of cloud? What do you think?
Server racks and hard drives.
Server racks, hard drives. What else?
Email.
Any other definition of what cloud is?
White things in the sky.
White thing in the sky is a beautiful definition. Yes. What else? Yes, sir.
Virtualized resources.
Virtualized resources. Getting closer. What else?
Virtualized platforms?
Yes, indeed.
Software as a service.
Software as a service, hardware as a service. XY, paraphrase that for you. It is essentially storage, compute, and network resources. It may be virtualized, may not be virtualized, but available to you on rent. In very simple terms, it's on rent. It's like, I have this car called Tesla. It's like $125,000. I can go and buy it, and some people do. But if it was somebody else on a graduate student, he may not be able to afford it, but he may want to buy and use that. May not buy, but use that Tesla. He can do that. In the cloud space, figuratively, he can do that by renting a Tesla. That's exactly what's going on in the cloud. If you have, this next door neighbor we have here is Amazon Web Services, AWS. They maintain humongous data centers of computers running and operating for who? For you. So you can rent them so that you don't have to manage them. You don't have to worry about, hey, my CPU is getting hot or my room is getting too noisy. Right? So you don't have to manage about this cooling or electricity bill. My electricity bill is getting jacked up. So what's going on is that companies like this are developing infrastructure so that you and me and everybody else on the planet can rent them. So effectively, you can get a high-end machine at a fraction of a price and use that on a pay-per-use basis. If you think of the smallest size machine that Amazon provides, you can use such a machine for 2 cents an hour. I'm talking 2 cents. Right? You can use that. If you use the whole month, it'll be like few bucks of a bill for the whole month of usage. So if you're like a Rails developer, you're developing a Rails app, and you want to have a machine running, say, Ubuntu, you can configure such a machine in Amazon Cloud by click of a few buttons and writing some specific configuration command so that your Rails environment gets ready. And when you write your Rails app with a git push, you can deploy it to your own box in the cloud. But that's just a small, tiny box for 2 cents an hour. You want to be able to scale it because tomorrow, when your customer base grows, you want the machine to be more powerful. You can scale it in 2 distinct ways. One is to make the machine bigger, which is called vertical scaling. And the other way of scaling is to scale it horizontally. So you can have more smaller machines. This is called horizontal scaling. So you can scale up or scale out. These 2 distinctly different ways of scaling your infrastructure if you're running a Rails app. And the other half of you who is developing an iOS app to connect to the Rails app can actually collaborate and create a very meaningful service. So what cloud essentially does is help developers develop services to offer to consumers. And these services doesn't have to be iOS specific or Rails specific. These are essentially cloud services that you get to define, identify the use case of the customer. What does the customer want? What specific usage scenarios the customers have in mind? And you identify the entire end-to-end plan of delivering a cloud-based service. And yes, you can use Rails on the back end, or maybe even a front end in a browser. You can render your Rails UI and your application can be rendered inside a browser, whether it's a phone browser or a regular desktop browser. Or you can have that backend serve as a help for the iOS application that's running in the hand of a user's hand, like on the iPad or iPhone. So that's the iOS developer part of your group. And you can construct these type of scenarios for the end users so that they can get to use. And back to the same Nest example. If you look at the iPhone, there is the Nest app, which is actually an application runs natively on the iPhone. And through that, You can control your home thermostat, which happens to be in Sammamish for me, right, far away from here. Now, on the back end, there is some website somewhere, some web server running, probably in the nest.com servers, that is having a user account for me connected to my thermostat, and that's the same login credential I'm using on the iPhone app, and see how the connection has established between that device through the Nest servers in the cloud back to my iPhone, so I can basically manage. Similar examples is with the Tesla car. You have an application on the iPhone. You can actually honk the horn of the Tesla parked in the in the garage there, or blink the lights, or open the doors. Things like that can happen, and it is really, really smart. What's really happening is people like you will be developing services for the users, for those people who will consume your services, and provide these services to them so that you can make money. That's the idea, right? It's a business opportunity that is facing us to be able to identify net new opportunities to create value for somebody else so that they can compensate you, right? That's the whole idea of learning, of doing something new, creating something fascinating so that people can stand to benefit from your work so you can create a livelihood. That's the idea. So if you think about these aspects and how do you put cloud to use, and where cloud computing can help and come to address what you have in mind, essentially is exactly what you're already doing. And I understand from your instructors that some of you who are doing the Rails camp have completed at least some initial exercises on using Heroku. How many of you have actually done the Heroku part? There are a couple, actually quite a bit. So tell me a little bit about Heroku. What does Heroku do for you? What exactly is going on in Heroku? What are they doing? Any ideas?
They are creating a layer on top of AWS that's allowing you to compile, switch your mode to production, and doing a lot of kind of the back-end magic that routes an HTTP request into that location on their servers and controlling the Git repository up there, which you can push to.
Yes, bingo. Exactly, that's what's going on. That's exactly how they're doing it. What they have done is actually a service to you. What service they're providing is to remove the pain of managing a machine, right? You can set up a machine like the 2-cent machine I spoke about. You can do that. You can take a machine and set it up with Ruby, set up with all the dependencies, all the gems, configure it, and then install Git there so you can remote Git pull from GitHub or wherever you store your Gits. And when you publish or when you push your Git repo from your application that you have on your laptop, that remote service hook will grab that and deploy it on your own 2-cent machine and keep it running. You can do that, but that is a hassle. Anything is a hassle, actually, if you think of it. Practically speaking, any work you do is a hassle. So you want to identify whether I should be the person who's doing that work or give it to somebody else. And there is a fundamental principle behind this, which is, if I am a specialty doctor doing like heart surgery, should I mow my lawn?
No.
Why not?
It's not worth your time.
Actually, it may be, if it is a Saturday. Right? So the concept here is, if I am walking on the street and I find a penny, should I bend down to pick it up? Maybe is the answer. So the answer is, if I'm in a hurry and I'm going to get a meeting with my Code Fellows buddies, I would ignore that penny. But if I have nothing else to do and I'm walking my dog on the street and I see a penny, I might pick it up, right? There is opportunity, just grab it. Not kidding, but that's how economics works, right? That's how economics works. It's called money on the table. If you don't pick it up, somebody else will, right? That's a fact of life. It will happen like this. And even if you're a brain surgeon or a heart surgeon, if you find a penny, you might, economically speaking, you might pick it up if you have nothing else better to do that time. So, back to this discussion on Heroku on platform as a service. That's a hassle to set up a machine in the cloud. So, do you want to do that? Or would you want to rather focus yourself on creating an application using Rails and hook it up to your friend's application who's writing an iOS app and make that work really beautifully to make your customers happy? Or would you be interested in setting up the platform yourself? So it's really it's a question you need to answer for yourself. Nothing wrong with picking up a penny or skipping it and going ahead. Nothing wrong with that, both of these aspects. It's your subjective decision. But you need to decide. And the core concept behind this is called the principle of core competence. It is what can I do, what I want to do, and I will do just exactly that. And everything else, I'll leave it to somebody else. Like, I don't want to get in the business of managing a machine. In fact, by the way, my son developed a Bitcoin miner, and he is running that machine in our garage. And it's a hassle to keep it running, up and running. And he's actually making money, but he's paying that cost. The cost comes from him having to go there and see if it's running or not, or if the power went down, or if the graphics cards are heating up. All these aspects are cost, right?
Electric bill.
Electric bill. By the way, electricity is cheap in this country compared to other countries. So, yeah. And so the idea is, who gets that hassle? Is it him, or should we mine it on the Amazon platform? Like, mining on the Amazon platform is possible. Technically possible, and yes, there are ways to do that. I can show it to you if you want to see that, or maybe give you links to you can operate on your own. But the point being, there's a cost to it. You have to pay Amazon a certain amount of money for using the GPU-enabled virtual machines that they provide. And I think the cutoff point is about 10 cents an hour if you get the price of a GPU-enabled machine called G2 something. I can go to specifics. If you get that machine at below 10 cents, you can potentially break even on Bitcoin mining. But what happens is, if people find this out and they bid up higher, and the price of the machines of GPU type go up, and then it is not profitable anymore. And so it's essentially a game of economics. If you want to do certain things, who should do it? The person who is best capable of doing that should be doing it, and that's the optimal route in economic terms. And the same concepts apply in the concept of everything to do that we do every day in life, specifically in the context of cloud computing. If it is machine management, let the infrastructure players do it themselves. Like, let us not focus on managing, upkeeping the machine and cooling them. Let Amazon handle it. Let Microsoft and Google and Rackspace, let these people handle it, because they know how to do it. They're best capable of managing it themselves. That's the thinking behind creating what is known as infrastructure as a service. The next layer up on top comes this concept of platform as a service, where you as developers of Rails don't have to worry about setting up Ruby, setting up Rails, setting up all the gems, configuring it, and making sure that it keeps up and running on an Amazon 2-cent machine. So if you do not want to do that part, you go to Heroku. And that's one way to go about. There is another competing way, which is to use another set of tools in the cloud that we have called, there are these configuration management tools available from another local Seattle company. It's an open source project called Chef. And Chef is a tool set that will help you create your own Heroku if you want. So your private Heroku that will scale, just like Heroku will scale. The problem with Heroku is that they charge money, right? So if you're paying 2 cents an hour on a machine, a really small size machine, you may not want to pay 36 or whatever the price is, $36 of a dyno. So $36 a dyno, you can get a dyno, and tomorrow your traffic grows, you want more machines, they'll charge you an arm and a leg and whatever. So why do that, right? Why not have your own platform as a service available to you? So there are these open source tools available today that you can configure, and the real question that you need to answer yourself is, hey, should I pick up the penny or not? Should I spend time and effort in creating my own platform as a service on top of Amazon, on top of Rackspace, pay only 2 cents a minute or 2 cents an hour? Or should I just pay $36 to Heroku and let them handle it? That's the question. Essentially, it's an economic question. And cloud computing helps you, address these questions very specifically, because you know the cost. And there is a trade-off which is called, I call it the concept of vendor lock-in. So if you say, for example, take on this, develop a beautiful application, and you take it on, put it on Heroku, you install it there, and your application base grows, your users grow, your needs grow, so you want to add more dynos, and Heroku will say, you know what, your application runs on my platform just fine, but I want to actually raise the price, not 36, it is $99 a dyno. So you are stuck. So you need that concept, what I call fungibility, which lets you take your infrastructure, your applications, and your services running from this vendor away to another vendor. If you have that ability, you retain the control. Control of what? Your business, your assets, your customer base, so that nobody can hold you hostage. So that's the fundamental operative idea behind letting you have the flexibility to move your services to wherever you want. Now, take that same concept and apply to iOS application development. If you develop an app, the only way to release the app today, if it is not a jailbroken phone, is the Apple App Store. And Apple charges whatever they charge, 30% for a paid application. Do you have an alternative?
No.
Sorry?
Your alternatives are not as good.
Actually, you have, that's a subjective question, right? Is it good for you or not? Should I pick up a penny or not? Is a subjective question. It's up to you as to what you think. But if you want to play in that ecosystem and use and deliver apps to the phones that are not jailbroken, that is the only route. That's a walled garden. There are a couple of other alternatives. One of them is not use the iPhone. The other alternative is create a web application. So you can have a Rails app rendered directly in a browser and deliver similar experiences. Or I think those are the two broad. If there is an intermediate hybrid route also, which is a development question, which is you can use a web app delivered inside a native app through a hybrid model. But again, you have to go through the App Store for that, which is this is something that you need to understand as you operate on and develop your service models, is to think about what exactly you're trying to accomplish from your business perspective, which is a different way of thinking about what I'm doing is not talking specifically about iOS application development or how do you do this particular thing in Objective-C or how do you write a Rails app. That's not what I'm talking here right now. What I'm trying to communicate to you is this bigger picture of running a business using the services what consumers today want with devices in their hands or in their homes or wherever they are, connected to the cloud to be delivering meaningful services for them so that they can pay you what you deserve to be paid. So think about that bigger picture about what exactly are we trying to develop from a user's perspective to deliver exactly what they want at a very affordable cost point to you so that you can charge them a reasonable rate and still make money. Right? Now, any questions on this topic until what we discussed?
One about Chef. Is that running off Docker? Because I've used Doku before. So is that a different side project that's similar to Doku?
So Doku and Docker are a slightly different concept than Chef.
Okay.
What Chef does is deals with your existing environment with virtual machines, real machines, Macintoshes, Windows, actual computers. It'll let you manage, configure them on an almost hands-free way in a concept. Let me describe. The way I would describe using Chef and Puppet and Ansible and Salt and other types of tools that we use in our programs essentially is that you define the outcome, the output state that you want to accomplish. And then it is almost like you tell a machine that you grow up to become a giraffe, and you grow up to become a lion, and you grow up to become a tiger, and you have a core embryo, which I call JEOS, or just enough OS. Just enough OS is what I would define is, I'll give you an example instead of defining it, is bare minimum installation of Ubuntu, for example, with OpenSSH server running, and nothing else, no other software installed. Just the bare minimum operating system to get the machine up and running and connect to it. That's what I would call an embryo. And now you inject DNA. This is a figuratively wrong analogy from a biological perspective, but I'm still using it. Sorry?
It doesn't work that way?
I have no idea. I'm not a biologist. But the idea is you inject the lion DNA and that particular embryo will grow up to become a lion. Right? Just figuratively speaking, this does not apply in biological sciences, but the concept does apply in your context. What happens is you want a web server. So you define your DNA so that that particular embryo becomes a web server and configures itself. And not just that, it will maintain itself like that over time. So you don't have to worry about it becoming something else. Right? You want a proxy on the front end, like a web proxy to front end your web application servers. You can define that role and identify that specific type of DNA and inject it into a particular JEOS. Some people call it juice, by the way. Inject that, and it becomes what you want. You want to have a database, a farm of database servers with one master and several slaves. You define your recipes, your cookbooks in chef lingo, and ask your infrastructure, hey, when you start up and you come to life, you grow up to become my database farm. And then it does.
I was just curious, Matt, so is there kind of a lot of automatic configuration that happens with Chef?
Yes, yes indeed. And you define what the outcome should look like, and it will do it for you. And I can demonstrate that. So I have an example I'll show you at the end of the talk, a demonstration of an example where I have a friend who needs to set up WordPress instances, lots of them. So what this particular chef recipe, I'll demonstrate that. What it does is it defines what the outcome should look like. So it will have your Nginx as a server loaded, PHP FPM loaded, MySQL loaded with a customized password pre-configured, so you know the password. And with one command, a machine in the cloud gets configured and ready for WordPress deployment. And I'll demonstrate that. Same concepts can be applied to, you have your Ruby or Rails applications. You define a cookbook and a recipe and you run it against any cloud provider. Take a machine in the cloud for 2 cents and run this chef on that. It'll configure itself to let you have that machine pre-configured as a Rails app machine to host your Rails app. So those things are possible today. So there is no reason, unless you have lots of free time, unless you do not have free time, there is no reason to pay Heroku that much money. $36 is too much when you can get it done for 2 cents plus few minutes, right? But you can do that only if you know how to operate the tools and you feel comfortable with what you're doing yourself. That is the critical part. If you don't feel comfortable in your own skill set, you better go to Heroku. That's the simplest way. Now in terms of Doku and Docker, that's a different structure. It's a different concept altogether. In what they have done is they're getting away from this classic concept of virtualization towards the BSD term called CHROOT. It's called change root. So you define your own environment. You use still the same operating system, the same environment, but you have a well-contained jail. It is actually called jail. And so you run within your jail. The BSD jail concept is what is extended in Docker. And there are a variety of tool sets available in that ecosystem, like Doku is one, DEIS is another. There are a few more tools available that will help you create your own platforms. When I say platforms, I actually mean, like say if you're a JavaScript developer that uses JavaScript on the front end as well as the back end, you can configure a machine instance to provide you an environment that will host your JavaScript applications in the cloud where you actually control the platform yourself without having to pay Heroku or somebody like that. That becomes a platform. Same concept applies to Rails. If you're a Rails developer, you want to load your Rails applications on the back end and you need a specific configuration. That configuration can be preloaded and populated so that you can deploy your applications and have it connect to your iPhone apps or your browsers or whatever you have. And a variety of standardized templates are available that people can use to deploy their applications in the types of applications that are being developed. So if you take a step back, what essentially happening is that people are developing services using objects in their hands or their homes or their workplaces that connect to the cloud and provide meaningful services. So cloud-based services is what is developing over time, and you are making it happen. You're doing it right now. If you may not be aware, the better you realize quickly that what you're really doing is developing services in the cloud. You can call it Rails bootcamp or call it iOS development, whatever you name it. What you're essentially doing is providing services using a variety of devices and the cloud infrastructure on the back end. That's what's going on. How are we doing on time? Cool. So the thing I would like to now do is to demonstrate to you the example that I just mentioned, which is spin up a cloud machine, pay 2 cents, and inject my DNA there to make it a machine capable of running WordPress. Cool? Should I change the resolution a little bit? Can you see at the back? I'll change it.
Leave it there and push the text size up. It'll be fine.
Okay, that's good. Yep, good. Yep, got it. Yep, I got it.
So at 2 cents an hour, they're still making profit on
I know. That's the crazy part.
it. Is there any idea what percentage margin they're making? 2 cents an hour?
I have no idea. And if I knew that, I would make money.
Well, remember,
Right away.
Amazon is almost scared that they're making profit.
So here is an even cheaper option. See what they say. $5 for 1 month. And this is not just any random machine. It's actually an SSD based machine. Right? So I love this infrastructure provider. And I'm going to just log into this account I have. And let me go to the test account. No, this is not AWS. This is another provider. That's it's a startup. And you want to see AWS? You choose. Yeah, it's totally up to you. So all I'm doing is creating a droplet, right? A machine in the cloud. That's what I'm doing right now. I'll give it a name. So I'll call it Cloud Genius. That's my domain name. And pick the smallest one. Let it go in New York. And pick Ubuntu OS. Pick the stable LTS configuration. Select my key. The key I'm embedding into it. Take a look at that. So no other software. This is just enough OS, bare minimum Ubuntu installation with SSH. Again, so host name, size, region, distribution, key, and I'm going to create the droplet. Ready? Okay. So it's supposed to be taking 55 seconds. Let's see how long it takes. It claims that in 55 seconds, that's the guarantee. So while it's doing that, what I'm going to do is open my repository which stores my example. This is an example DNA. What it's doing right now, if you look at, is installing apt, installing a hostname, MySQL, MySQL Server, Nginx, PHP, FPM, some modules for PHP to interact with MySQL, curl, and WordPress Nginx, which is a custom recipe. So these essentially will get injected into that JEOS which is building up right now. Once the machine gets up and running, what I will do is get the IP address from there. And this is the IP address. I'll copy that over like this. I copied it in my buffer back here. What I'm going to do is replicate this exact and save it locally. So what I'm doing right now is go to the nodes folder, list out all the nodes I have, and I'm going to copy the example file that you saw and call it that IP address.json. That's what I'm doing. Essentially, is copying the whole thing with a different name, and I just did. Now I see that here. That new file showed up, right? That's the JSON file with the same exact content. this one back here, and now I'm going to run chef on that remote instance by typing using a gem called knife. I'll make it bigger so you can see it. So what I'm doing here essentially is I'm running a gem that is a part of your chef setup, providing my set of recipes, which is defined as a DNA injection that will help set up WordPress backend. And this command will connect remotely to that machine in the cloud, set up chef there, take my repository, move it there, or copy it there, run it there, configure it for me, and we'll come back and we'll be able to see that machine ready for WordPress, right? So here I am going to hit it, and let's see what happens. So what it is doing is bootstrapping Chef right now, basically loading Chef from Amazon. It will go to Amazon as a simple storage service and download Chef from Amazon onto that DigitalOcean instance. So here you see ops code, omnibus packages from S3, Amazon getting downloaded. And now it's installing it here. And once the installation of Chef on that remote computer finishes, it will upload this repository to that location and run Chef on that machine. And the beauty behind Chef is that it runs, you can configure it to run on its own on a periodic basis. So if something goes wrong with the machine can correct itself. And Chef runs are idempotent. Idempotent is a mathematical word which basically, in very simple terms, it means like multiplying by 1. So if you have some number, multiply by 1, same thing. So you keep on multiplying by 1, the same thing happens again and again. So anytime you run Chef, it will again restore to the design point you had in mind when you designed the entire Chef repository for you, for the machine configuration. So the beauty here is Chef will not just set it up for you, but also maintain it for you. If something goes wrong, some settings go wrong, it will correct them. So you don't have to worry about maintaining machines. That's a tool that we have in the open source that is available for us to use. And you can see that it just installed a password. This is my super secret password. And now it's installing the SQL Server package, configuring it, restarting, and the machine slept. And it's still doing that finishing install and done. So now it reported that it did a whole lot of things, installed the whole machine. The machine is actually configured and ready for WordPress deployment. Let's check it out, see what it's doing. So I'm going to say SSH. And this will enter in that machine in the remote location. And let's see what got installed here. You have, first of all, Nginx should be running. Is it running? Yes. Let us see. MySQL installed. Yes. PHP? Yes. So you have all the components needed already there. And we started from JEOS. And you can configure this machine to run this particular Chef package, a set of cookbooks that we have on its own on a periodic basis. So even if you actually physically destroy, let's say, I'm going to kill that thing that we have, that Nginx running there, right? So I'm going to kill that process, the Nginx process, by typing 9893. You see what I'm doing? So I'm going to kill that process and see what happens. It died partially. I'm going to kill the other guy. 10298. Okay, all of them dead now. Yeah. So back to our machine. We'll run Chef again. And this time it will go and find out that your Nginx died. It will start it for you. You can be brutal with the machine and actually uninstall MySQL and run Chef again. It will install it for you and run it and keep it running. So you can absolutely go and create havoc and have Chef correct for you.
So can you run like you can have multiple recipes in Chef that you have a seed recipe and then you can keep on putting in other recipes
Yes.
for other different groupings or sauces?
Yes, you can do exactly that through what I will show you once this finishes. It actually finished. So if you read that, if you read here, you see what it did. See, it reloaded that service, which I killed by hand, right? Here, reload service Nginx. Now let us go to that machine, remote machine, like this, and find out whether Nginx is running. I expect it to be running, and it is. But I killed it. It corrected it. And you can go, do whatever experimentation you want to do, and I can provide this whole package for you to play with if you like. You can customize it to what you want to be able to relevant to you, not WordPress but Rails. And I can even guide you to get to that point. You can hook up, and as you go through the process of learning iOS, you can eventually learn what I think is called parse, P-A-R-S-E, which is a BAAS, backend as a service. Meaning, people come up with these names, random names, anything as a service, right? Yeah, whatever as a service. So, education as a service. So we are delivering that service to you, right? Yeah, so the idea is that parse will help you create interesting, intelligent applications on the iPhone where somebody else is managing your backend data. Right, so that parse concept will be useful to you in your iOS application development as you will learn about it. By the way, parse got acquired by Facebook. And I understand from your instructors that you will also learn other variety of services like Facebook SDK and a whole bunch of cloud-based SDKs that these services providers will give you to make use of in your applications. And these are third-party services that are available that you can use, but the idea underlying that I'm trying to communicate to you is you can create your own custom services and your own custom applications and deliver that service to somebody, your target audience, your target customers on your own without having to worry about anything else. It's totally in what you decide is your boundary, and you define that in your boundary, define your experiences and deliver them to make more money. Otherwise, you are ending up either getting locked up with somebody or paying them more, right? So any questions on this?
Do you have like a workflow of that that's posted somewhere that we can see later?
The chef thing I showed you?
Whole process that you just did?
Yeah, I have this on GitHub. I can expose it to you. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Where did you get the recipe or whatever you want to call it for that JSON file? How did you set that up?
Yep. So the best way to get a recipe is to copy it, right? This is open source. So people like you, smart people like you, already have developed a ton of recipes out there. Use it. It's open source. But make sure to contribute back. Make sure what you're doing, give it back to them so that other people can also benefit from it. That's the idea behind copying. It's not just blind copy and not give. That's stealing. Give it. So take it and give. That's how it grows. So there are a whole community of, let me just go there and show it to you, what I'm talking about.
Josh, how many recipes that you find on the internet work just like out of the box without any tweaking?
Yes, without any tweaking, almost all of them work. And this works because of people like you. Because you take it and you make it work and give it back to the community and improve it. So I'll give you this example of what the community behind this particular case of Chef is doing. Maybe this link is better. Yes. So here is the community where people are getting together. And I'm actually using these recipes. As you will see, Apache 2, no, I'm not. MySQL, yes. Nginx, I am. So you see this Nginx here. I'm using this. I did not create it. I copied it. This one. You can actually go through this link and go to the recipe, the Nginx recipe, and see it was last authored by this gentleman about a month ago, and see the contributions there. 58 contributors, people are participating on it, and these things, they leave it in a state that works, at least for them. So you need to get this and make it work for you and contribute back. That's the idea. If you scroll back here and you look at what recipes I'm using, this is too small, but I can read it for you. On the list you can see that I'm using recipes from apt, build, hostname, host file, MySQL, Nginx, Ohi, OpenSSL, PHP, PHP-FPM, RUnit, Varnish, WordPress, XML, and Yum. All these recipes are essentially community contributed. I did not write them, except this one, which I tweaked. And I'm going to give it to you and to everybody so that you can use it. That's the whole idea, is to create recipes actually means copying from somewhere and modifying it to make it work for you and giving it back to the community so other people can benefit. That's the whole idea behind open source. So make use of that. Copying is great. It works. That's the idea. Next question.
Last question. Is there one more? About all for time.
What, do you have any thoughts on privacy and cloud computing, like seeing the NSA thing that's happened this last year?
Yeah, I would rather not talk about NSA, and but bottom line is security and privacy. These things are very, very important. The best way to handle these aspects are to making sure that your methods of security are foolproof and intact. Meaning, there will always be some forces that will act against you. I call them the adversary forces. They will be opposing you in some form, some fashion. I don't know where they belong, where they come from, but be aware that they exist. They will come and destroy you or attempt to destroy you. That will happen, no doubt. I can guarantee that it will happen. You know, the adversaries can mean natural disasters. It doesn't have to be a dude, right? Anything can go wrong, and it will. So your machine might, the whole building in some data center might collapse. It might happen. So you need to prepare for that. The best way to prepare for that is to plan ahead for a disaster, assuming that disasters will happen. And if you plan like that, you're safe, relatively speaking. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Very much. All right, feel free to grab Nilesh if you have any further questions. Otherwise, go forth and finish up your assignments for this week. Rails folks, you have one assignment over the weekend to do something from Code School, whatever looks like the right level of challenge for you from the Ruby course.
Please give me the raw source. Thank you. I want to see that.
Details are in Canvas. Otherwise,
You don't have to do it right away.
It's all going to be, we're not going to edit it at all.
Yeah, raw is good for me.
Def, but not
Have a great weekend.
20 gigabyte file, the 2 gigabyte file, or 3 gigabyte file, because that's what they're giving me. I won't even. The sensor on that thing, that's a high security camera. That's basically that.
Make a big file.
So the sensor is just janky. Yep. So I'll give you a very high def. It was great. It was exactly what I was hoping for.
Okay.
Yep.
Useful.
Very